A young sailor. The young coxswain gave his wife and baby boy a kiss goodbye. He was scheduled to pull night shift for the next week on the USS Downs. He had been stationed at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, a year earlier. He looked at the calendar on the way out, December 6, 1941. Tomorrow was Sunday, and he would take his small family to church, have a nice lunch, and spend the afternoon relaxing, just like he did back home in North Carolina. He often reminisced about his childhood and how he spent his summers in the country working on his aunt and uncle's farm. He didn't know why, but something had been telling him to go home and visit his family. He had spent the previous night dreaming about the summers he would spend on the farm as a boy. He would help feed the livestock, pull pigweeds, and put up tobacco. But most of all, he loved spending time with his cousins, Bill, Grace, Byron, and Audrey. They were younger, and he'd always felt more like their older brother than their cousin. He really loved being able to spend the summers with them in Duplin County. He remembered having a special connection with his oldest cousin, Bill. He was 3 years her elder, and they had an inseparable bond. He couldn't get his dream of the farm out of his head all day Saturday. The memories of the farm left him feeling warm and tingly inside. He longed to go back to his youth, working with the animals and living off the land. But the days of running around barefoot were over. He was a sailor in the United States Navy with a child of his own who would soon be running around barefoot himself. He headed to work on the USS Downs. The ship was in a dry dock for repairs along with 2 other destroyers, the USS Cason and Pennsylvania. It was nearly 8 o'clock, and he would spend the night working on the destroyers until 8 o'clock the next morning. As the hours drug on, he decided to take a break and write letters to his cousins back home. He wrote one to Belle, her parents, and her brother and sisters. He told them how much he missed them and how much he wanted to be home on the farm so bad he could hardly stand it. He loved being in the Navy, but there was no place like North Carolina. He finished up his letters and continued to work on the ship. Soon his shift would end and he would head home to his little family. 5 minutes before he was scheduled to leave, the naval base was attacked. Time for an instant stood still. Japanese planes soared overhead, dropping bombs on the ships at Pearl Harbor. The Japanese Imperial Navy had both planes and submarines attack the ships docked at Pearl Harbor. The young sailor had no choice but to help defend the base. He listened to the orders given by his commander on board. "Man the guns! Fire!" The sailors tried to obey the commands, while the attack roared on. The sailors were to fight until the destroyer could no longer be saved. Then and only then were they allowed to abandon the ship. The sailor and his shipmates fired all the weapons they had on board. Frantically he ran, trying to do all he could. A torpedo fired by an enemy vessel lodged between the USS Downs and the USS Cason, causing the oil spilled on the ships to catch fire. The dry dock was flooded in order to help put the fires out, but this only made things worse. Instead of extinguishing the flames, the oil floated and burned on top of the water, causing even more destruction. Once this occurred, the sailors were given orders to abandon ship. The young coxswain, being the valiant sailor that he was, saw his shipmate in despair as he was leaving the ship. The sailor was trapped in a burning part of the ship, and the coxswain stopped to help him. Some of his comrades saw this noble effort and reported them after the attack ended. Sadly, the young sailor's body was never recovered from the wreckage of Pearl Harbor. And now for the rest of the story. The United States Navy noted the sailor's efforts and heroism. He was awarded the Navy Cross posthumously for sacrificing himself to save a comrade. Furthermore, a destroyer escort was also named in his honor. The ship was commissioned for nearly 2 years before it was retired to Norfolk, Virginia. This young man was Edward Carlisle Daly, my great-grandmother's first cousin, who spent many summers on her parents' farm and was like an older brother to her. Like my great-grandmother, many people who lost loved ones at Pearl Harbor felt the attack was justification for the United States to declare war on Japan. In fact, Franklin D. Roosevelt declared war on Japan the very next day, which entered the United States into the Second World War. The United States remained at war for the next 4 years until the surrender of Germany in 1945. And now you know the rest of the story.